I stand, unmoving, in front of the door to the nurse's office for what feels like at least a dozen minutes or so. It's not like I never entered the small beige room before, nor is it because of any feeling of childlike anxiety over the visit. Maybe it's because the nurse's office is akin to a confessional, an admission that my body is... Oh, God, sorry, my bad hiccups. An admission that my body is flawed. The knowledge that such a fact is kept entirely confidential between the nurse and me hardly lessens the feeling. Remembering that the bell to signal the end of lunch break will sound soon, I give a sigh and open the door. Burden will stay with me just this while longer. Well now, if it isn't Akai, good to see you. Or bad, I guess, considering that I'm a nurse. He gives a small laugh, amused at his little joke. I find humor lacking and somewhat off, but the fact that he can make light of such a situation is perhaps comforting, or at least distracting. His brief episode of entertainment over, he claps his hands together and gets down to business. I take a seat as he gestures me to do so. I wish the classrooms had seats this comfortable. I can feel my mind wandering as my eyes quickly scan the room, distracted by all the small changes since last I came. Alrighty, so what brings you here? I haven't seen you often, so I assume your health's been good so far? Oh, mostly. I see. His smile drops as I trail off. I feel slightly guilty about it. It's these moments where I can't rationally call myself normal that makes me so reluctant to see the nurse. They're an admission that I'm different from everyone else. While I was on a trip during the long weekend, I had a few problems with my heart. He hums very seriously and nods as he does so, urging me to go on. I think it was... it was... as I was walking a fairly long distance. I think the right term is a heart flutter. I suddenly went weak at the knees and felt almost like I was having a small heart attack, but it passed in about half a minute. Even afterward, though, I felt pretty fatigued and nauseous. Not good. Not good at all. That was how many days ago exactly? Did you do anything unusual aside from exerting yourself before the episode? Were you taking your medication properly? The nurse switches from awkward jokester to serious health professional mode, rattling off questions, making notes, and calling up stuff on his computer. I tell him about forgetting my pills that morning and the preceding evening. It was a stupid thing to do, but I can't change anything about it now except answer honestly and bite the bullet. His seriousness evolves into a frown, and the talk evolves into an instant checkup. I finish buttoning up my shirt and again get motioned to take a seat in front of the nurse. Is this the first heart problem you've had since coming to Yamaku? I've had short pains in my chest before, just a couple of times, but they were more discomfort than anything like this. He leans back in his chair, briefly resembling a white-coated Poirot, as he mulls over the mysterious case of the heart flutter. Moving his lips from side to side to show that he's thinking, his non-existent mustache wiggling, he eventually comes to a conclusion. Well, you survived it. That's always on the plus side. I blink at this one, and then notice the nurse wearing his got-you face. It's actually somewhat reassuring. I don't think he would crack jokes if things were really serious, so I keep silent and take my lumps. I'll have a talk with your doctor, but right now I suspect it's simply due to physical exertion. Have you been keeping up with regular light exercise as I directed you to? I make sure to walk a reasonable amount every day. It's usually enough to work up a bit of a sweat, but then I'm not really as fit as I used to be. That should be good enough then. The main thing is to keep in mind is to do regular low-stress exercise, not short bursts of sprinting and such. I understand. Since leaving the hospital, I've been a lot more focused on my studies, partly due to taking my mind off of not being able to do more physical things. It's good to hear you coping well. Sudden lifestyle changes can be hard at the best of times, so I'm pleased to hear that you sound like you have everything in order. Almost everything, that is. Nevertheless, I want to keep a close eye on you for a while, just for observation's sake, just to make sure things aren't going downhill, you understand. That's something I really didn't want to hear. Since coming to Yamaku, all I've wanted is to live as normal a life as possible. Observation was one of the words I came to hate during my hospital stay. For so long, I felt I could have just walked straight out of hospital doors if not for that observation the doctors wanted so dearly. Sure, should I come in more often? He checks the calendar next to his computer, which seems to inflict him on a nasty case of furrowed brow. He spins back towards me after that. Summer holidays are a bit of a pain, considering the timing. I'll check with your doctor and try to get a better handle on the situation and see how he wants to proceed. But I think you should just take things slowly and carefully for now. What you're describing doesn't immediately sound like a reoccurring event, but it won't hurt just to slow down a bit for a while, just to make sure. What should I do for today? He looks over my shoulder at a clock hanging over the door. I'd never have noticed it if I hadn't followed his gaze. It's nearly time for school to be over, so you may as well leave early. He gives a sly wink, making sure that I understand he's doing me a favor. Well, nurse's orders. Thanks. That's what I'm here for, after all. I know you might not want to hear this, but you can't ignore your condition. Don't hesitate to see me if you have any further problems, or if you just have anything you want to ask. Bye. He spins around, gets back to typing on his computer in front of him, and I suppose I'll just read before waiting for Lily by the gate, considering I don't have much else to do. Even as I leave, his words echo in my mind. My condition isn't something as limiting as many others here in Yamaku, and I don't want to burden Lily with thinking about it. If I just live life normally and avoid any short, sharp shocks, I should be okay. I won't let my condition rule me. Okay. Take a sip during the bell, lads. Lily comes into view soon after the bells heralding the end of the school day ring out. She says farewell to a number of her classmates headed in the other direction before beginning her weekly trip to the convenience store. Afternoon, Lily. The immediate warm smile and relaxed demeanor she assumes upon noticing my presence are unexpectedly welcome. Hello, Hisao. Good afternoon to you too. She hesitates for a second, but eventually deigns to tilt her face toward and close her eyes. My lips meet hers with a measure of slight trepidation before we move off hand in hand. The fact that we're so close in height is somewhat useful at times, there being no need for either of us to turn our heads upwards nor downwards in order to meet the others. Guys, have you ever been with somebody who was shorter than you? That is so annoying. What I would have to do, since I'm 6'2", I'm a big motherfucker, and I was dating like everybody I've ever dated has always been like 5'4", 5'5". So I've always had to like if this was us, right? I would always like put my legs like that so I could like go down. It was like weird. It was more of a funny thing, but like it's strange because if you don't, you have to like lean all the way down. It sucks. It sucks. Doesn't take much time to leave the noise of the other students far behind us. The tapping of Lily's cane in her free hand, the only sound to be heard. Oops. Silence, blissful silence, is all that greets us as we walk slowly down in the setting sun's light. I think I'm coming to really like this town. A huge green hilly expanse, the trees everywhere, and the somewhat rustic little buildings. You're describing things that she has no idea. So you've come to appreciate the tranquility of it as well? I think so. I came from a metropolitan city near Tokyo, so the quiet of this town really alienated me when I first arrived. After a while, it became really nice, though. I think I prefer it to the hustle and bustle in my home city now. Well, I preferred the quiet of such rural town when I first arrived. I suppose I had the advantage of growing up in a quiet area before I came. Hanako said the surroundings are very pretty, too. Lily may say such a thing quite easily, but each time she mentions how others describe sights around her beautiful or pretty, I feel a bit put off. I notice her expression becoming one of anticipation for some question or another. She always had a good sense for when somebody's not saying something that's on their mind, so I may as well speak up. I was kind of wondering, how to put this. Do you ever regret that you can't see what things look like for yourself? It's just something I've been thinking about. She thinks carefully for a time. Do you ever regret that you can't hear people whispering on the other side of a room? I can only speak for myself, but the fact that I can't see is the only way I've experienced life, so just as I cannot do something you can't do something that I'm capable of. The fact that the world is made of those who are sighted and can be a pain sometimes, but there are many, many people who suffer it much more than I because of the way the world is. That doesn't make sense, but still, it just feels kind of bad to describe something that you can't experience. She tilts her head quizzically, as if I just said something that makes very little sense at all. But I can experience it. You said to yourself that you like this area because of the way the surroundings are. I like the area for the very same reason. Thanks to the fact that it is a small rustic town surrounded by trees, it gives some peace and quiet away from the din of school and bustle. Not to mention the smells of the city. Suppose it would be much like home, she shared with Akira as well. Her outlook on it seems pretty sensible, and I'm not surprised that she's got much of a better handle on her particular condition than I do on mine. Just like how her coming from a location of somewhat similar to Yamaku's surroundings let her become more acclimatized for a shorter time. Being born blind affected her stance, by her own admission. I should stop being so annoyed with myself over it, but I can't shake the feeling that I've depended on Lily for far too much, given the circumstances most have to deal with in Yamaku. That makes a lot of sense. You're pretty good at explaining, as always. Come to think of it, where's Hanako anyway? She was with us for lunch. Seems she's busy studying. The exams are far from over, but she said she wants to do better this year than the last. While I admire her work ethic, she's really been trying to give us a lot of room alone recently. She's that type of person, I think. I think the kind that puts others' needs before her own at every chance. She's a sweet girl, even though she has much to hurt in her past. I don't know. It feels like it's only now, when she's less close to me than ever, that she's truly finding herself. It was thanks to you that she began to become more confident after all, not me. Take my hand from hers and gently place it over her head. The important thing is that you were there for her. I can't imagine that she'd like being without... Yeah, she would like being without having found someone like you. That much became obvious while you were in Scotland. We're all still friends, so we've got to have faith in her. I think she'll become a good person, and that much is thanks to you being there when she most needed it, just as you were there for me. It makes Lily feel a bit... Oh, shit. It makes me feel a bit childish when you sound so wise. Well, I try. Are you doing anything on the weekend by any chance? Nothing that comes to mind. Why? Then how about a date on Sunday? Be something to do besides exam prep. Considering my rapidly beating heart, she simply smiles and nods. That would be lovely. Where would you like to go? Her face suddenly changes to one of disapproval. You can't do that, Hisao. That's cheating. Do what? A gentleman should never ask a lady where to have a date. Oh. Her smile quickly becomes back, assuring me that she's far from serious. Don't worry about it. I'll think where we could go. I'll leave it to you then. I promise to decide on the next date, though. With our plans for the weekend made, the rest of the walk down the hill continues in silence. The prospect of that lasting for any length of time, however, is shattered as I catch a sight of a familiar figure waiting for us, her hand held high. Kira, yo! Sorry, I didn't know my camera died. I was playing with the cord. I think I probably just broke it. My bad. Thank you. Come again. The exchange in temperature as I step outside from the convenience store sends a chill up my spine. It feels like summer is starting to wind down. Looking to my side, the same feeling seems to affect Lily as well, though unlike me, she doesn't manage to hide the fact. Something I didn't realize at first was how physically delicate she is compared to the likes of Hanako. If I had to describe her, I'd have to say that she reminds me of a China doll. Whoa. Kira walks up behind her and gives her a couple hard pats on the shoulder, much to Lily's consternation. For a moment, she looks as envious as my status as an only child as I am their close of their... She looks as envious as my status as an only child as I am of their close relationship. They talk between themselves for a few moments as I sort out my bags. Their voice is too low for me to catch, but eventually they break off and we begin to walk back to school. Feels good to be out of that damned office. You kids don't know how good you have it here. Kids. You too. Ben, kids grow so fast nowadays. You're not old enough to say that. I don't know. Being around Hideki always makes me feel damned old. He's so precautious. Yeah. He reminds me of you when you were younger. He's a nice boy. Be a shame if Shizune comes to have too much of an influence on him. Kira gives an amused snort at her sister's antipathy. She really doesn't seem to regard it as anything to make serious fuss about, treating it more like a childhood spat. She looks over to me, apparently just remembering that I'm here, and gives a small grin as she reaches toward her back pocket. What is it? Just a sec, let me dig it out. After quite some difficulty, she manages to retrieve her black leather wallet from her back pocket, quickly fishing out what looks like a folded square of paper. With Lily, all but unaware of what's happening, Akira unfolds the scrap and hands it to me. That's cute! An old photo of what looks like a younger Lily and Shizune operating a noodle stall with some other girl in the background. She looks vaguely familiar, but I can't quite pinpoint why. What is it, Akira? I think you know. Lily mulls over for a few moments before the realization dawns on her. Akira, you really needn't. It's fine, isn't it? Besides, it's the only photo I have of you two since you entered Yamaku and you're not at each other's throats. I look back at the photo in my hand. It does seem strange to see Lily and Shizune working together so diligently without any sign of animosity. If the photo of them is during Yamaku's festival, that means that it must have been taken 1 or 2 years ago. In other words, the time when they were both in the student council together. Who's the girl in the back? She looks kind of familiar. I knew you wouldn't recognize her. It's Misha before she went and all dyed her hair pink. Oh my god, that's Misha. I didn't even think about it. I was like, she looks familiar. Yeah, whatever. And I was like, it was probably just somebody, whatever. I didn't even think about Misha. Oh my god. Misha. With her long brown hair. Oh my gosh. And Lily looks happy. Shizune just looks like Shizune. That's Misha? No way. Feels extremely strange to see Misha without her very distinctive hairstyle. Judging from Akira's tone, she doesn't take favorably to Misha's idea of fashion. Suppose that fact just accentuates how odd the situation looks. To think they were so friendly in the past, I wish I could do something to mend their relationship. You're being very quiet, Hisao. It just feels kind of strange to see you all so friendly like this. Lily moves to say something but stops herself. In the end, it doesn't matter for me. Between Shizune and Lily and nobody else. Things change, unfortunately. And the photo back to Akira, who sighs as she folds it up and slides it back into her wallet. Little memory quickly hidden away, to be pulled out again sometime later. Yeah, that'll do. Initially, I think Akira's reaction to be simply in response to the situation between Lily and Shizune, but she looks oddly glum compared to what I'd expect. Lily's expression has clouded as well. What's wrong? It's just that I'll be going to Scotland fairly soon. You're leaving for Scotland again? For a long moment, Akira looks surprised. It's an ill-fitting expression for her. At a glance at Lily, she turns back to me as if she'd never done so. Yeah, in a couple weeks, I'll be leaving for Inverness to work at the company headquarters. It's a pretty big jump in corporation position, and it's not a chance that's going to come again. So Kira's going to leave Japan on what seems to be a permanent basis. Can't help but feeling my assumption that we could all live happily while away our days. What? That we could all happily while away our days having fun in the isolated little world is coming to an end. It's unsettling. I look at Lily, mildly surprised that she hasn't told me such a thing, and despite usually being so forthcoming. She continues to walk with her face fixedly pointed ahead. I can't read her expression, nor can I even guess what's on her mind, which is discomforting, given how it's usually easy for me to do both. It reminds me of a time when we met at the Shanghai, just before we could be what could be called our first date. At the time, all I could do was comfort her without knowing the cause. It now feels no different. As we finally reach the school dormitories once again, there's a somewhat awkward silence, and I don't think I'm the only one who feels it. See you tomorrow then, Lily. Bye, Akira. Good night, Hisao. See ya. And with that, they walk to the female dormitories. Opening the door to the male dormitories, I stop and look back at them just moments before their figures disappear behind the heavy wooden door. That was a strange moment when Akira said she was leaving. While that wasn't the first time when my thoughts regarding my new life had been called into question, it's perhaps the first time to do so quite profoundly. I still don't know what to make of Akira's reaction, much less Lily's. The night's chill reminds me to get back to my room before I catch something. My bag's pulling down my arms, which seemingly doubled in weight. If nothing else, I have a date with her set up for the weekend. I just need to stop overthinking stuff and get on with things as they are. The exams are still ongoing after all. With the trimester's end and the summer holidays beginning soon, there'll be plenty to keep me busy for a while. As I give a yawn and retreat inside, my thoughts turn to what Lily will decide to set as this location for our weekend rendezvous. Wow. That was like awkwardly deep. It wasn't like deep, but like something happened. We don't know what happened.